Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2 R's 2 B's from Gundam Reviews.net, and episode 37 of Gundam Age has come and gone, which means that we're nearing the final quarter of the series, and it's time for the action to really slow down as we get a more introspective look at the big bad guys in an effort to humanize them for both the viewers and Kyo, which means that this review is not going to have too much focus on the action or mobile suits for a change. For Character of the Week, we actually get to say goodbye to Flit, who certainly has been stealing the show through much of the second and third generations, and even though Kyo didn't really shine and we didn't get to see too much of his personality, we do get to see the young impressionable side as the Stockholm Syndrome kicks in, and more or less he's going to meet some new friends / future enemies, and we do get to see a little bit of his personality, which is going to be mirroring, at least his appearance does, Lord Ezelkant's son. But as thin as Kyo's character development has been, at least we're getting some this episode, which is really starting to make him feel like the protagonist, and that we've actually moved on from the first and second generations. And here, with this being a vegan-focused episode, I thought we'd be seeing a lot more of Zeheart and things like that, but instead, the focus was on Xanard, who's really reminding me of Dazl Zabi, and he got to bring Kyo there, and of course he's not going to agree with his commander all the time, as he is becoming quite vocal about that, even violent, which means he may be hatching his own schemes, which is going to bode well for the vegan self-destructing in true Zeon style, and setting up an Earth Federation win, but at the same time it means that there may be some redeeming sides on the Martian side after all. And though they seem to be a little bit more like plot devices than fleshed out characters, I wonder how much more we're going to see from the two kids that Kyo ran into. When he was in the streets, his bag was robbed, which meant that he needed help from a local tough kid who happens to have a dying sister who seems to be quite cute and sets up the triangle in ever so slight a way for Kyo. And you can't help but wonder if that boy, whose name I forget, isn't going to end up piloting a Dorado or a Danazine at some point near the end of the series, but either way it did humanize the conflict for Kyo and the viewers. But Character of the Week for me has to go to the master himself, Lord Ezelkant of the Martian immigration failure / return home movement. And basically he's been leading the Vegans and he will stop at nothing. And in the true to Gundam style, it's great to see that he's got that supportive / understanding wife at his side. Now he lost his son earlier on, and it's not explained exactly how, but we're going to see, of course, that he's going to be both using Kyo and at the same time going to feel some affection towards him, knowing that if he can turn him, whether it's just a plot for the mobile suits, either way, it's going to be interesting, and it was cool to see his side of the story. The voice actor seemed a little bit hammy, but then again, that's as a good villain should be, and we got to see part of his plans laid out on the table, and at the same time, still butting heads with some of the hardliners in his side, show that there may be some redeemable qualities not just for Zeheart, but for him, but then again, the desire to win and the cost that he's willing to go to may be too much to have him redeemed in any way, shape, or form by the end of this series. Which leads us to Scene of the Week, which really, outside of the character moments, of which there were a lot, all that I can think of was that very cool opening scene where we got to see a lot of the vegan mobile suits outside their second moon base. And for Mobile Suit of the Week, for a Mobile Suit Gundam episode, there was absolutely no action whatsoever. We got to see the H3 orbital, which is in the hands of the engineers, who are certainly going to be doing something interesting with that for Xanard and perhaps for other nefarious purposes. However, at the end, it's going to be turning into the Gundam Legolas or Romulus or Ridiculous, whatever you want to call it for the time being. And I can't wait to see that, and especially if Zeheart gets his hands on a Gundam with some Adidas striping, that should lead to some pretty epic final encounters in this show. Overall, this was by far one of the most slow episodes that we've seen in the whole series thus far. No mobile suit action whatsoever. Outside of the H3 in the hangar, you really wouldn't know that anything was going on. However, it did do a good job of advancing the plot, and it just takes us a long way from the UE, where for the first 13 episodes or so, we didn't know who they were and why they were fighting, and once they did reveal it, now it's time to humanize it in the form of the big bad and his wife, and of course the fact that we have the two generals, the good one and the bad one, or so it seems, in Zeheart and Xanard, is just going to set up all sorts of permutations towards the end. And you have to wonder if Kyo, what he's going to do. He's got a raging racist and a grandfather in Flit, which was the style at the time, and of course with the personal things that Flint went through, you can't help but understand why to some extent. However, to what degree Kyo is going to either be succumb to the pressure and fall with them, and at the end of the day, who is going to end up piloting those next two Gundams? That's the question on everybody's mind, and with the next episode, we should be seeing a little bit more of a lot more important characters, including the Dark Hound, or so I'm hoping, as it seems to need more ASM. Anyway, everybody, why don't you let me know what you thought of this quiet episode and this review. Of course, love to hear from you with a comment down below. And stay tuned for next week. And it's sort of cool. I'm actually a fan that the show has slowed down and taken the time. We've had some great action up to here. But anyway, it's just time for Kyo to have a moment, and the Vegans as well, to know why we're all fighting and get everybody their motivations in place to set up the final climax. Anyway, everybody, we'll see you next week for episode 38 and more Zeonic hijinks. Bye. Grandpa, you cannot say those kinds of things. They're just not acceptable in today's day and age.